Danielle, it's interesting to take a look at the retail complex in the United States. As we were just saying, Walmart performed very well. Target did not. Costco just reported their numbers yesterday. We do pre-tape this. It's Friday the 13th, by the way, everybody. But they actually came in with better than expected results on a same-store sales perspective, up 7%. Traffic was up by over 5%. How are you reading what's going on in retail companies in the States?
So if you track same store sales in the aggregate across all of the publicly traded companies, what you're seeing is we've gone from a very rapid run rate when stimulus money was flowing freely, really down to an unchanged number year over year for 2024. How on earth can that be possible when you're seeing such strong results from the likes of Walmart and Costco? And if you listen to what the
Mm-hmm.
managers are saying, it really has to do with the makeup of what they sell. So in the case of Walmart, the fastest area of growth was pharmaceuticals. So people are paying for their prescriptions, for what they need in terms of true essentials and groceries. So it's the makeup of Walmart's product mix that benefited them to the extent that it did. Not that US consumers have the wherewithal to make discretionary purchases. Costco echoed these same sentiments that Walmart did, saying, we are seeing our customers come through and be much more value oriented in their purchases, much more careful with what they're buying. They're also seeing that there's a K-shaped economy in the United States. By the same token, they're saying for the people of means, the people that Federal Reserve
Mm-hmm.
policy benefits, we're seeing the best grades of meat being purchased. At the opposite end of the spectrum, they're seeing those customers trade down to the lower cuts. So it's
Mm-hmm.
when you begin to see these dichotomies, you understand better that there's not as much to be spent on discretionary. Walmart and Costco are effectively cannibalizing on the sales of
Mm.
other retailers with a more discretionary bent.
Mm-hmm. Great point. Also, your point about the beneficiaries of Fed policy, i.e., people who have risk assets, i.e., own equities in the market and private equity and venture capital, they have been beneficiaries of lower rates for so long, which I think that you've been a bit critical of, or at least recognizing what that does to even just the U.S. balance sheet. What are your thoughts there today in terms of the accumulated debt in the United States and where we go from here?
Well, that's a really fair question because your average US consumer is being increasingly carried by government transfer spending. Uh, and that's never a good sign. We've seen an inordinate amount of job growth in the United States come out of the government and the healthcare sectors in the last 12 months to the detriment of the private sector that we would think of as traditional white collar type of job creation. And at the same time, the wealth has become even more concentrated than it was prior to the pandemic because of Federal Reserve policy that truly benefits asset owners. And there's something of a third world feel increasingly in the United States. And I think that
Hmm.
policymakers should be attentive to that because the wealth is so concentrated. Americans over the age of 70 own 25% of the real estate and 40% of the stock market. Uh, it's fair to question going into the new year, with the Federal Reserve continuing to lower interest rates, how this cohort that can no longer go back into the workforce is going to react to their interest income declining as the Fed makes savings, what we get paid on our savings, go down. And this is not a
Mm.
question we really had to face in the prior two downturns because the same baby boomers were able to go back into the workforce. That's no longer the case.
Hmm.
So there are implications going forward.
That's so interesting, right? The baby boomers, so many of them are really truly retired and they're not going back to work. It's interesting though, you talk about almost a third world nation within a nation that's so wealthy and rich. We see it here in Canada as well. About 80% of the job growth on the last jobs report was government, and government's certainly not known for growing unless perhaps, you've got this pro-growth policy under Trump, but that's not traditionally the way politicians work, but many people say he's not a politician. So that's number one. But, you're seeing the food banks here, the increase up by about 60% or so. 20% of the people going to a food bank around this area all have jobs. So the system, some people would say, well, then we need more government, but it's really the government policies that have been so large over the past number of years that have not worked for mainstream. And I think that's why you saw such a reversal in your US elections.
I couldn't agree more. And we're seeing a similar phenomenon in our food banks as what we're seeing in Canada. But Canada's got this balance sheet recession to contend with.